kind of reintroduce my question into your answer. So, Craig, thanks for joining us. Congratulations on the book. It's amazing. I'm curious if you can just talk a little bit about the making of the book itself and how you had to maybe bare your soul to kind of go back through some things that are a little bit painful.
For me, the actual coming up with the book idea, coming up with the concept of it, a lot of it was based upon a lot of stuff that I read about my career as far as the internet was concerned, looking through some of the articles and stuff, and so much speculation about what happened later in my career and the like. So I always loved to write, and it was something that I always wanted to do, but to actually sit down for 18 months and go through it day by day and try to, bear your mind to every situation and then have different people talk to you so that you could draw up some more memories and the like, that it became a true process. And for me, it was a process that I didn't know anything about when I talked about going into it. And that's why it was cool to, me and Roy to come across each other and then find a way where we could balance, the work and keep it fun at the same time. And I think that's the biggest part of, I think anything that you're going to do well is to enjoy what you're doing, even when it's in terms of you having to ask serious questions about what went on in your life and be able to be transparent about it and have a thin skin but a thick skin at the same time. So it's been a cool process, and I'm glad that I did it, and now to actually see this part of it, this is something that I never thought about going into the making of the book, was what would it be like after the book was actually released, and the life that it takes on of its own, and that you're really almost just in a passenger seat for it and letting it, and just going for the ride.
Cool. What do you hope young readers might get out of this book?
Well, I would like for it to be a point of inspiration, not so much from try to be like Hodge as far as the basketball, but be a respecter of people, respect knowledge, respect the people who bring it to you. Don't be neglectful to what you have from a gratitude end. Just know that you may not have as much as the next person, but be grateful for what you have, and try to work on the principle of gratitude, that if I can stay humble and be grateful for what I have, great things are going to come before me. And just try to do the right stuff, man. And I think that's the biggest part for me in my book, is that ain't nobody perfect. I'm not perfect, and nobody in my life has been perfect, but I've had some examples that were perfect. And as far as some of the ways that I saw leadership in my life at a young age, that it gave me an example of, I want to do that, and I want to feel what that's like to have a room full of people, and we put a plan together, and then we go out and execute it, to see what that's like. So it's that type of stuff that I would hope that when a young brother or a young sister who's an athlete or who's not an athlete, that somebody puts my book in front of them, or they happen to be going through the library, which I feel is cool, that my book is in the library or in a bookstore, and they actually see it and say, hey, man, let me see what this is like. And then they open it up and actually see that it's something that, my life is no different from anybody else's. I just had a chance to tell my story, and you have a chance to tell yours. And don't be bashful about life, but make sure that you always respectful of the people who bring you information and knowledge.
So a coach is the kind of person who would bring you
no
inspiration and knowledge. Can you talk a little bit about just the value that you see in coaching?
Right. And for me, when I think about coaching, it takes on a whole different path for my life. When I think about, from the earliest age, my uncles who taught me how to play sport, my grandfather who taught me about sport, and then the actual formalized coaching that I got when I left the house. So, understanding how to appreciate coaching is just like how to appreciate a good teacher, and that knowing that they're in it for giving you good information so that you can become better, and to be able to be, as a coach, to know that the respect that your players gain from you is the amount of respect you give them a lot of times. That, oftentimes we expect to be taken from an authoritarian standpoint, and I think the generation that we grew up under, there was more of an authoritarian father figure thing going on, where the coach could never say or do anything wrong, where now this generation is sophisticated to I got rights and the like, where you can't just be a Bobby Knight on a kid anymore. And I think that's good. I think it's good where, you know, it's a certain give and take where respect and values are concerned, that I can expect, you know, my players to be respectful of me when I'm screaming and yelling at them over nothing, over a mistake that they may have made. So, you know, it's one of those things where I think temperament is important at this day and time in order to get messages across. But at the same time, being able to find that balance point where you need to kick some butt, you have to do that. And knowing what child I can, you know, get to have some type of leadership and through example, that I might be able to go holler at them and on a certain level and then tell them, yeah, I'm just doing that to you because we need to get through to so-and-so, and they understand that. So I think coaching is a psychological and a parenting situation going on, and you have to enjoy what you're doing. And I think if you're not enjoying it, you shouldn't do it.
What are some of the ways that you really kind of connect with your players?
Well, my biggest thing, you know, I've been blessed to have played on the highest level, and so a lot of the respect you have coming in the door, but you're still going to be tried as a coach. You're going to still be tried with your information of whether or not it works. I'm a triangle guy, so my players all the time want to try to get me out of the triangle. You can talk all you can talk till you blue in the face, but it's not going to change my mindset of why we running this system and why it's effective. So I think it's one of those where it's a constant, you know, you're constantly working on your craft, as always, whether you're a player or coach. But I think as a coach, you always want to stay current with the trend as far as being able to communicate with guys. I'm not a techie by no means. I just have my cell phone, Facebook, Instagram. I ain't on none of that, but I know my players are, so I have to be cognizant of what they're talking about at a given time and know when to step in and when to step back and laugh. So it's been a cool experience for me. I enjoy it because I've always taken the mindset that when I was younger, I would get on people's nerves, and maybe when I wasn't getting on their nerves, they was gravitating from my energy. So I always try to look at not so much they getting on my nerves, but I'm sucking up that young energy to keep me young.
Excellent. You know, one thing I didn't tell you about before is that our organization, Phil Jackson, is very involved with us.
Okay.
He's been our national spokesperson for about 15 years.
Good.
What are some reflections that you have on Phil and the way he coached and how that influences the way you coach?
You know, one of the biggest things about the way Phil did his thing was he was always, to me, when people ask me about PJ, I always say that he was one of the greatest managers of people that I've ever been around. And his ability to realize everyone's strengths and weaknesses, and the ability to keep everybody where they're constantly on the strong side of things, and that we're covering everybody's weaknesses until we work on them to when they become strength, and now we can unveil them that. And him being able to know when to push a button on different guys on the team, he was a master at it, and I think that's why he's had so much success in coaching, not so much in the front office. You know, it depends on, you know, when I look at the New York situation, that was a total fiasco, and it's going to go towards diminishing the importance of the triangle to me, that, you know, people are looking at the triangle cross-eyed now as though it's not a system worthy to even consider, and I feel bad about that, not so much for PJ but for Tex, and knowing what the role that Tex Winter played in Phil's success, and him being able to have a system that Tex gave him that was solid to get him to win all those championships, and then to be able to go elsewhere with it. You know, I just feel bad that a lot of people are looking at the triangle like it's an ineffective system, when I know it's the best system going. You can look at what Golden State is doing with just a portion of it and the success that they have. And so, you know, PJ did what he's done in the game, and he's going to be considered, he's a Hall of Famer, man, like he is. So, you know, he's in great shape. Yeah.
So through Phil, and when Phil was inducted in the Hall, he felt bad that Tex wasn't in yet.
Right.
And then he asked my boss to send me down to interview Tex. in El Segundo,
Okay.
and was blown away. And he gave me a copy, this like sweet little spiral-bound copy
No
of the
question.
triple post
No
offense.
question, no question.
It was amazing, and I was coaching middle school at the time, and really benefited from
Yeah,
it.
no
So
doubt, man. The system-
it'll work if you don't have Mello, right?
Yeah, it'll work. And you know, and the thing is, when I was watching Melo try to get to the system, it's one of those things where if you haven't had to move the basketball, move yourself, move in certain space, and move with purpose, it's a different. It can be a headache. It can be a total new basketball world for you. You're gonna be a fish out of water for a certain period of time, but as this is any system, if you're not buying into it wholeheartedly, I don't care if it's give you the ball every time. If you don't want the ball every time and you're not going to buy into that every time, that's not going to work. You know, so I just feel like a lot of the guys have become so cognizant on how I want to play the game as the way the game is supposed to be played, and that we're not buying into the portion of what is my responsibility as a player to be prepared for whatever system a coach brings in front of me.
Great. I want to return to the activism, and I know we got just a few minutes left. We'll get you off to dinner and everything. What advice would you give? And you gave some in the session, you know, to the young athlete who is considering some form of protest or what have you. Whether you want to repeat or amplify on what you said there.
I think, you know, the biggest thing for me with young folks and activism is that we have to keep children out of harm's way, man. And a lot of that is, it worries me that if children just go out to a Black Lives Matter movement and not know what's going on, that you can be in harm's way in the instant. So let us make sure that we know what it is we're protesting or what we're boycotting. Be more research-minded, be more cognizant of issues, bring yourself up to speed before you speak. I like to tell my team all the time, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, you know, so we're supposed to listen twice as much as we speak. Likewise, let's be mindful that, hey man, if we take our time and look at this thing, and especially from a coaching standpoint, you know, understand that so much of what these children want to do is because they see it someplace else. And we don't want this to be, we don't want activism and consciousness to be a fad in their lives. We want it to be a sustained momentum until the goal is no more oppression, no more suffering, no more homelessness, no more starving. And that's the mindset of what we're protesting for now, that if young folks that we speaking to accept these premises, then half the work is almost done, because now we have the foot soldiers who all believe that this is a human factor and not no black, white, brown. No, it's about we on the same spaceship, same planet, and we got to make it happen the proper way. And I think this generation of millennials, to me, they have almost a hippie spirit about it, and but it's hippie with sophistication and technology. And that the information flow is instantaneous now, so you have a lot more. Like my athletes, like I said during the little question and answer in there, a lot of my athletes want to take a knee, and why are you taking a knee? Because Colin did it. That ain't your reason. That's not the reason. Do you know why? Did you know? So then when you bring the reality to them like that, they're willing to accept the challenge of, let me go study a little bit more. And that's what we have to challenge them to think. Don't just react. And when you think, know that whatever you're thinking about is going to carry some consequences, man. And you want them to be positive in nature all the time. Great.
Do you feel that athletes have an obligation, or maybe a better way to say, to what extent, and try to bring that down to the youth as well?
Yeah, I feel like as a child, my childhood, I challenge anybody to have a better childhood than I had, and I grew up in the projects in Chicago Heights. We were no silver spoon, none of that. But just how much fun we had creating fun. You know, how much fun we had finding a tire over here, a crankshaft over here, a chain over here, a bike seat here, and putting a bike together. You know, so it's those type of things that as a young person that you have to realize what's important in your life, and what's important in your life now is building relationships. building friendships that's gonna last a lifetime, knowing that what is a friend is trust, you know, and that if I'm a good friend, I'm a good sounding board. That none of my buddies should ever feel bad about coming to ask me for help, coming to ask me, running something by me about a positive or a negative I'm getting ready to do. Man, I'm getting ready to go out in and gank somebody. Nah, brother, you can't go do that. And that's the type of, you know, for me, that's the type of brothers and friends that I had growing up that I feel great about, that to this day we still homies. That, you know, it was based more so on the local. And that's when we talk about this activist thing and what athletes can do. What can you do on your local level? What can you do to promote something for, if you're a high school student, what can you do something for 8th graders and junior high school students? When you see them doing something, you got to grab them and let them know that, hey, this is how you got to go about that. That's not the way to go, and that every level has to be a mentor to that next level below them, man. I think if we can get young folks to do that, then we're going to see some changes in the next 10 to 15 years.
What little advice would you have for coaches who are listening to, you know, woke athletes that want to do something like that?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things for coaches is to try to get as many examples. If they're looking at a Black Lives Matter, if they're looking at LGBT, try to get examples in those areas to get them to study and become more sound about the decisions that they're making, the information that they have. Try to flood them with good, positive information, and whatever exposure they're looking for. I have guys on my team that want to sing, so I done got them studio time to bring you through here to see if you're capable of doing this, because who am I to say that's not your passion? That you're a great hooper, but singing might be your thing, man. So let me get you in front of some brothers and sisters who know that. I don't know that, so let me put the exposure where you can get it and get them exposed to things, man. And then try to be a good sounding board to where, like, I got 2 or 3 big athletes that would be great rebounders for me. But I got to tell them, man, go be a tight end, because you got more of an opportunity there than to think that you're going to be the next Kevin Love. You know what I'm saying? There's not too many of them that's grabbing rebounds and shooting. And so let's use that bulk that you have. And then there's another couple that you got to go play soccer, man, because you got quick feet, but you just running without the ball. So let's go try a different sport that we as coaches have to play psychologists, parents, and do all of the like and play those different hats and just have fun with it, but also be mindful that you was 15 at one time, you was 12 at one time, and know when to scream, because screaming is necessary. Know when to shut up, because shutting up is necessary. And this is just like us asking our players to make reads, we have to make those same reads as coaches, and be humble to the fact that we make mistakes too.
Outstanding. I'm going to turn